Okay, good afternoon everyone. We are back with the Alshech Academy. It's Parashat Vayishlavh. And we're going to be learning all about the Alshech on the Parsha. Just a second. I'm going to do this. Okay. So this week's Parsha we have the story of Yaakov Avinu coming back to Israel after he took a 34-year trip away from his father's home, 14 years in the house of Shem and Ever, 20 years in the house of Lavan, and it's time to come home, but he's afraid of Esav. Now this whole story of him being afraid of Esav is a very interesting story, what his methods were to deal with the Esav threat and how he proceeded with the whole situation. So we're going to go through the Psukim, B'ezrat Hashem, and Rav Moshe will teach us, as he always does, beautiful Torah between the lines, beautiful Dvar Torah's explanations. B'ezrat Hashem, the seven Hatzliach, may we merit to understand the beautiful Torah in the Zchut of the Holy Tzaddik, Holy Alshech. Okay. Says the pasuk, Vayishlavh Yaakov malachim lefanav. Yaakov sent angels ahead of him, in front of him, going ahead of him, El Esav Achiv, going to Esav, Artza Seir Sdei Edom. And we'll see with Psukim later go into exactly what he told them to tell him, and all of that, etc., as we're going to go into soon. But first we need to understand a bunch of questions and observations as to what is going on here. It says Rav Moshe Ra'ui Rashit Lev. We have to pay attention al hasvara hayoter mitkabelet al pi hachreichiot hayaduim shehayu malachim mamash. So we know that malachim, the word malachim in Hebrew can mean angels, but it can also mean messengers. So it's not clear 100% that we're talking about angels. Maybe we're talking about messengers, but there are some explanations, there are some commentaries that say that. But Rav Moshe is saying, I'm not even going to go into proving why it's angels. If you look into other commentaries, they go into detailed proving why it has to be that these angels were actually malachim to be translated as angels. But this is obvious, says Rav Moshe. So, but now that we know that malachim in this case is angels, and as Rashi says malachim, Rashi adds one word, mamash. Malachim mamash. So now that we know that the malachim is angels, we must understand why he sent angels and exactly what the angels were there for. Why couldn't he send people? As we're going to see now, Rav Moshe going through the questions one after the other. So Aleph, the first question is Lama bachar bahem me'ban Hashem. First of all, we need to understand why choose angels over people. Usually when people need to do things, we get our fellow humans to do things for us. People that we have at our disposal. Yaakov had many slaves, many servants. He was a rich man. He had many people to do the job for him. Why use angels? Number two, so first the question is, what was his reasoning to use the angels? But besides that, is actually actually it's worrying. It just doesn't seem right to use angels for personal purposes, for personal gain. Right? Angels obviously are Hashem's messengers. We can't just use angels whenever we need them. Number three, Omro lefanav. The pasuk says Yaakov sent angels lefanav. Obviously, he was heading towards Eretz Israel and he was going to go past Esav. So when he sends them towards Esav, he's sending them ahead of him to go ahead to meet Esav. So why does the pasuk need to say that when he's sending them to Esav, it means ahead of him? To mention that they were going ahead is unnecessary. The there are those who explain. This is actually an explanation in the Midrash that says, Vayishlavh Yaakov malachim lefanav. He sent the angels that are lefanav, the angels that he had in front of him. Im keinu hayar meharui lomar milefanav. If it's talking about angels, it should say milefanav. He sent angels from those that are in front of him, or he sent them from in front of him to go elsewhere. So the grammar doesn't seem to support this idea. Number 4, Amro el Esav achiv. He's sending him to Esav, his brother. We know Esav is his brother. This is not the first time we met these two characters. Milo yedaki achiv. Do we not know that Esav is his brother? Number 5, Saimo hamakomot artzas seir sedei Edom. Why does he need to mention where Esav is, or where Esav is based? He could just say he sent his messages to Esav. Why is the coordinates of Esav's dwelling important to what the pasuk is telling us? Vav, number 6, Amra vayitzav otam limor. So now we're going to go into the next pasuk, the second pasuk of the parasha, which goes into detail describing what Yaakov's message was with the angels, and exactly what wording he used. So it says, "Vayitzav otam lemor." He told them, he commanded them to say the following: "Ki achrei amro baheretev ko tomrun ko amar lama makdim milat lemor." So this is obviously Rav Moshe's main question that comes across almost in every parasha. That lemor means to repeat. So here it actually is true that they were supposed to repeat these words to Esav, but in fact it already says later on in the pasuk, this is what you should say. So it says, "Vayitzav otam lemor." He told them lemor to repeat the following: Ko tomrun. You should say the following. Ladoni Esav. So again, he's telling them to say the following: Ko amar avdecha Yaakov. The following after your slave Yaakov said. So we've got 3 introductory mentions of telling him to tell them to tell him that he told them. It seems to be obviously it's got to be someone saying something, and it seems to be that the message already begins earlier on, and he's telling him to tell all of this, and we'll see why all of this is included in the actual message they were telling him. It seems to be telling them, it says Vayitzav otam lemor. He told them to say. Then it says Ko tomrun, so the following you should say. So the two of them are not necessary. Very interesting pshat. We're going to see soon later on, Bezrat Hashem, how Rav Moshe understands exactly what was included in the wording that they told Esav. Number 7, Ma inyan amro im Lavan garti, ki lo ne'elam mimeno. Esav knew that he was in Lavan's house. As we mentioned last week, that right from the beginning, it wasn't a secret that Yaakov was going to Lavan's house. So why is this part of the announcement he's making? He's not telling him information. So what is he telling him? What message, what point is he trying to get across by the fact that he was living with Esav, with Lavan? So Rashi actually says 2 explanations. Rashi says either Lavan Garati, I was living, like crashing at Lavan's house. I don't own any real estate. I don't have my own house. I've been lodging in Lavan's house until now. Another explanation, Rashi says from the Midrash, that Garati is the gematria of 613, which means that I always kept the mitzvot. So you should know that I have merits on my side. So you should be afraid to mess with me. But Rav Moshe is obviously going to tell us a different angle, because there's obviously something that Yaakov is trying to tell Esav with this. Number 8, Amrav va'echar ad ata. He's saying, I was living with Lavan, and I tarried, I stayed there until now. Why is that part of the, what is he trying to say there? V'chen Amrav va'hi li shor v'chamor. What does he mean when he tells him in the next pasuk, I have a donkey, a bull, sheep, slaves? What's his point of saying that? And number 2, okay, so he wants to tell him, he's actually, what's the whole general theme of what Yaakov is telling Esav here is obviously words of appeasement. So if you're trying to appease Esav with the fact that he didn't steal the brachot and the brachot aren't being fulfilled in Yaakov, then don't tell him that you have great wealth in all this cattle and sheep and slaves and servants. You should be trying to conceal from him the fact that you have great wealth. That's what the next question in Rosh says is Tet, how is this going to help Limtzochen Beinav to find favor in his eyes? This is only going to cause an opposite effect. He'll be jealous. He'll say that all of this is stolen through by him stealing the blessings. Yud Amra Vayishlavh Hamalachim Ki Amra El Yaakov Hu Miutar. If we look into Pasuk Zion, the fourth pasuk in the parsha, it says that Yaakov sent the angels and he gave them the message to say to Esav, Vayishlavh Hamalachim, the angels returned. But the pasuk doesn't just say the angels returned; it says the angels returned to Yaakov. Why is it necessary to point out that they returned to Yaakov? Obviously, they returned to Yaakov. Number 11, Omro Banu, V'haya lomar halachnu. Ubimkom Omro gam holech, haya lomar v'gam ba. This is a very interesting observation from Rabbi Moshe. The wording of the angels to Yaakov, they say, Banu el achicha, we came to Esav, and he is going towards you. So usually when we say coming, it means to come to this place, to where we're currently standing. And going means from this place to somewhere else. But here the angels are actually using these terms in opposite way completely. They say we came to Esav, even though they went from here to Esav, they went, which is holech. And then they say v'gam holech, Esav is, instead of saying Esav is coming, v'gam balik ratcha, it says Esav is going towards you. That makes no sense. Amra, number 12, El achicha Esav. Mi lo yada ki Esav hu. Gam haya lo lomar El achicha Esav. U'ilat v'gam ma balarabot. So he says, we came to your brother, to Esav. Again, we're saying, it's your brother, it's Esav, as Rashi already points out this question. V'gam, he says, v'gam, and also, besides, what do you mean also? You haven't said anything yet. Usually when you say also, it means you've mentioned one piece of information already that we didn't know. And also, besides that, there's something else. Here, all they've said is that we came to Esav, and you should know that he's coming towards you with 400 men. So why does this V'gam insinuates that they already mentioned some kind of information regarding what their mission was to come back with the report, and they're adding, besides their report being the question that the Yaakov had being answered, they're adding another piece of information that he's coming towards him. So this is actually mentioned already in Rashi, where Rashi says, Banu el achicha el Esav. Rashi says, you said he's your brother, but you should know he's not acting to you like a brother, he's acting to you like Esav. So according to this Rashi, Rav Moshe is going to go in a similar explanation. When they said, we came to your brother, to Esav, they're already telling Yaakov the response, meaning what they observed in their visit to Esav. That we came to your brother, but he's not acting like a brother, he's Esav. He's acting like Esav, meaning he's still trying to kill you. He still hates you. And that's already the answer that Yaakov asked for. Meaning he didn't ask to come back with an answer, but he basically wanted to appease Esav, and they gave him this message that Yaakov gave them to say, and they're coming back and saying the message, mission unsuccessful, he did not accept the appeasement. V'gam, and besides that, Olech likratcha, he's coming towards you. Not only is he still angry, he's actually carrying out this anger now, and he's coming towards you with an army of 400 men. Number 13, Ra'ui laha'ir kushya al Yaakov. So now comes a more general question, which is actually brought up by many of the commentaries in all different types of ways. The main question being, what was Yaakov thinking? Why did he feel the need to do this whole procedure of sending people to Esav and then having to do the whole appeasement, with the presents and the gifts. Why didn't he just completely ignore Esav? Why even think about it? It's been 34 years since the blessings were stolen. Why don't you just assume that Esav has now moved on to bigger, better things? He's busy trying to establish his regime in Seir. He's got his Edom. He's got his situation going on. Why even mention the fact that you're coming back to town? Right? That's what Rav Moshe is going to ask. Right? We're going to hear Kushya Lakov Ma Ra'al Kacha Ki. So actually, I made a mistake here. Rav Moshe is not asking this question here. It's asking this question that I just asked. He's going to bring up later. At this point, Rav Moshe is going to ask us why Yaakov wasn't trusting in Hashem's promises that Hashem told him. Ma Ra'al Kacha Ki Charad Kol HaCharada Hazot. Why was he so scared of Esav at all? Va'ana azav kol avtachotav yitbarach she'evticho. Why did Yaakov feel that he didn't have the security of all of the blessings and the promises that Hashem promised him in the past? Right? We know on the way, this is the beginning of last parasha, in Yaakov Avinu's dream, in the Har Moriah, Hashem came to him and promised him, I am going to be with you. And I'm going to save you from Esav, save you from any enemies, and be with you until you come back to the land, and it's all going to be good. So why is Yaakov suddenly worrying? And we know that Rashi asks the question as well. And what does Rashi say? Rashi addresses the question when Yaakov begins praying to Hashem, and he says, I have become small, I have become an unworthy because of all the good you have given me. And Rashi explains, based on the Gemara in Shabbat, that I'm afraid that since after this time that you promised me all these promises, I have become sullied with sin. I have become dirtied and unworthy of all of this promises being carried out. So that's what Rashi explains was the worry. But it seems to be that Hashem's promises shouldn't be dependent on sin, and it should be Yaakov should have more bitachon. V'gam kushya ala malachim. So Rashi said that Rav Moshe is asking that the angels, at least they should have known better than Yaakov. Yaakov, at the end of the day, is human. So Yaakov, you can understand, he's got a strong, angry brother that has murderous intent coming towards him, or he's going to come towards him and he's going to come across his path. You can understand that he's human and he's afraid. But aren't the angels godly? Do they not have to realize that Hashem is on Yaakov's side? So why didn't they tell him, Sir Yaakov, I appreciate you giving me this mission, but do you not believe in the Lord? Do you not remember what he promised you 34 years ago? And that should have been the end of the whole story, with the angels reminding Yaakov to be more trusting in Hashem's promises. Al tira Yaakov, as we say, do not fear Jacob. Ki Elohim imcha, the Lord is with you. And not only that, you can see from the fact that you have angels at your disposal. What does that mean? It means that Hashem's sending you've got divine bodyguards, divine protection. So why are you scared? V'gam kushya le'Elokeinu. The question goes even stronger with Hashem. Why did Hashem not come to Yaakov? Especially after Yaakov already, we see later on, he prayed to Hashem. And Hashem doesn't come forth with any response. Jacob is a prophet. And he's going through a very difficult time. Why don't we find Hashem coming to Yaakov in a vision, in some kind of divine revelation, and telling him, do not fear, my son. I'm here with you. I promised you, and promises are still valid. Why does Hashem not come to back him up and give him a boost in his confidence? Says Rav Moshe, in order to understand all this, let's go back to the end of last week's parasha. As Rav Moshe likes to do this because it's interesting, because sometimes we don't get to the end of the parasha, and then we have the beginning of the parasha, and we don't really have the full context of what the parasha is. So the end of last parasha finishes off with Yaakov and Lavan making a deal about how they had a covenant together. That discussion ends, and then it says Yaakov headed out on his way. Yaakov halach ledarko. After that meeting with Lavan, they parted ways, and Yaakov went on his way. Vayifg'u bo malachei Elohim, and godly angels happened upon him. They crossed paths, him and the angels. Vayomer Yaakov kasher ra'ah, when Yaakov saw these angels, he said, Machanei Elohim zeh. This is a camp of godly angels. Vayikra Shem hamakom hahu Machanayim. He called this place Machanayim, which means the place of camps, the place of two camps. Instead of Machaneh, it's Machanayim. And as Rashi there says, that who were these angels? These angels were the Eretz Israel angels, because we already know from last week's parasha that Yaakov Avinu has angels guarding him, but the different angels, there's the Eretz Israel angels, they don't like leaving Eretz Israel. They are strictly Eretz Israel angels. They don't take the tumah of Chutz La'aretz. And then there's the Chutz La'aretz angels, and those were the angels according to the Midrash that went up and down the ladder. But where was that? That was by Har Moriah, in the gateway to heaven. They came up and down there. But here we see Yaakov Avinu meeting the new angels as he's about to head into Eretz Israel. They come towards him, and then following this two psukim, begins the next parish. This week's parish. It's interesting actually because in the Christian separation of the chapters. The chapter starts last week. The end of last week starts off that Yaakov went on his journey and he found angels, and then he sent those angels to Esav. It's the Jewish tradition that separates the two. So the chapter actually, if you think about it in more of a non Torah perspective, is actually the story fits well with end of last week's parasha being the beginning of the discussion. So that's what Moshe is doing for us. He's taking us back to the beginning of the theme. So now Moshe is going to break down these two psukim. Why does it say Vayakov halach ledarko? Yaakov went on his way. Why does it not just say Vayakov halach ledarko? What's the darko? What does that mean? What's it specifically trying to tell us? Number two, va'amro vayifg'u bo. Vayifg'u bo means when you meet someone, you're going down the road and someone else is coming the other way and you meet them. But that doesn't make sense with angels. Angels don't walk down the street and on the other side of the road, and you're walking this side of the road and you just happen to meet. How do angels show up? They show up from heaven. Ki im yordim min hashamayim. V'hayala lomar v'yar malachei Elohim. You should have said he saw the angels suddenly. Or v'yisa einav v'yar v'hinei malachei Elohim, as it says in the beginning of the parasha last week. So the question is, when it comes to angels, usually v'hinei is a very important word, because v'hinei means and behold, meaning he was just looking out into the horizon, there was nothing there, and v'hinei, the angels suddenly show up, because that's usually how angels show up, because they're not physically visible until they are supposed to be physically visible for the person they're intended to be revealed to. So why is the vayifg'u bo seems to be that they already were on a journey and they were heading towards him already in this revealed way. Number three, machidesh b'amro machanei Elohim zeh. What is he exclaiming when he says machanei Elohim zeh? This is a godly. Obviously, when you see angels, you know the angels. Well, what's his exclamation describing the angels as angels? Number four, shayal lomar machanei malachim. What does it mean machanei Elohim? Machanei malachim is a group of angels. Number five, lama karana makom machanayim. What's specific about machanayim that he called the place machanayim? So now Moshe is going to tell us the whole theme of what's going on here with Yaakov and the angels and all this stuff. So it says Moshe as follows: Omnam hen emet ki berchot aviv me Hashem hayu lo liYaakov. The blessings that Yitzchak gave to Yaakov were actually supposed to be Yaakov's. It wasn't like he stole it. The truth is, in the real order of things, those blessings belong to Yaakov. And as Moshe brings the Zohar, kamufurash b'sefer haZohar, as the Zohar says, he brings here the Zohar in the bottom, that the Shechina wanted to make sure that Yaakov gets the brachot, not Esav, and this was what Hashem wanted. Ach Yaakov lo atz. Yaakov wasn't so confident about this. He wasn't so sure even whether he did the right thing. So this is a very key point here, because this is going to explain Yaakov's lack of confidence in his situation regarding the threat of Esav. Because if he knew that he was 100% in the right, 100% vindicated, he knew that he did the right thing with taking the bracha, he would have been confident. But he wasn't so sure himself. He thought, maybe after all, I stole the blessings, and I'm actually not deserving to be completely exonerated from Esav's wrath. Maybe Esav's wrath is becoming to me. Therefore, he said, Ulai gnuvot hayu imo. Maybe the blessings are stolen. Vayat tzarich leratzot et baldino. And he said, the best I can do at least is to try and appease Esav. I need to try and appease Esav because he had a side, he had a reckoning with him because he felt that maybe Esav had a point with his anger. Hashem, however, from Hashem's perspective, Yaakov didn't do anything wrong. Yaakov only did the best thing he should have done. The blessings belong to Yaakov. That's what Hashem wanted him to do. It all came from Hashem. But the question is now, if Hashem wanted the brachot to come to Yaakov, then why did Hashem make it have to come in a way that he had to steal it and cheat and do all kinds of trickery to get it? Says Rav Moshe, they look in the Zohar last week, and Mufurash B'Sefer HaZohar, the Zohar says that it had to be done in this way. Makbil el inyan Adam v'Chava im anachash. This is the same way the Zohar is telling us that the same way that the Nachash, who we know the Nachash is the Samach Mem, the evil forces, which Esav was the embodiment of. We know that later on in the parasha, the fight between Yaakov and the angel is actually the angel of Esav, which is the Samach Mem. So we have the Nachash, who is really the same energy as Esav, and he came back in the Gan Eden, and he caused all the curses to come into the world. The Nachash is the one who caused Chava to eat from the Itzadat, and then caused Adam to eat from Itzadat, and he did it in a sly way, as it says in the pasuk V'Nachash Haya Arum. He was sly. He was a trickster, and he managed to convince Chava by saying you should touch it, you shouldn't do this, shouldn't do that. He basically played around with her mind, and that's why the Zohar says that because all of the curses in the world came through the Nachash, and he did that in ways of trickery, Hashem wanted that in no way, shape or form should Esav get blessings from Hashem through Yitzchak, and Esav should be now given a protective bubble of blessings, a blessing space to exist in, even after he was the one, or his Nachash energy was the one to bring down the curses in the world. So Hashem said, no, Yaakov is going to be the one that's going to be exonerated and given protection, a cocoon of blessing protection in this world that is wrought with curses after the Nachash has done that. And that's why it had to be done with trickery to reverse the Nachash trickery and to act as an antidote to that. So that's the Zohar that Rav Moshe is quoting. So at least what the point Rav Moshe is making is that the blessings really were Yaakov's and they were truly his, and there was nothing that he had to worry about, but he just didn't know that. He didn't know that he was actually in the clear. So now, Hashem wanted to show him that. Hashem wanted to show him that he's doing good. So that's what Hashem did here with these angels. So now Rav Moshe is going to point out how unique the story is, that the last two psukim in last parasha, how important the details of that story is to point out the greatness of the event. When Yaakov came back to Eretz Israel, kibdo yitbarach kavod gadol al yidei malachav. Hashem sent his angels down in order to give Yaakov great honor. Mashalona aselo. This didn't happen to Yaakov, but when Yaakov went on the reverse trip, when he went on his outbound trip towards Haran, there the angels didn't give him that much honor. What were those angels? As we mentioned, they were angels that were accompanying him in Eretz Israel, went up to go back to the heavens. And new angels came down to accompany him in Chutz La'aretz. Ach ata b'shuvo. Now, when he's returning to Eretz Israel, there was two things that happened, says Rav Moshe, that was more unique and more special VIP service than he got on the way out. First of all, Yatzu lakbil panav malachei Eretz Israel terem istalku aba'im imo. The new angels came before the old angels left. Ba'ofen shaya kavod kaful. There was a double measure of VIP honor given to Yaakov. Achad, number one, shemalachei Eretz Israel yatzu chutz la'aretz lechvodo. The angels left Eretz Israel and came out towards Yaakov into Chutz La'aretz. And now that's a very, very special thing, because we saw last time that Eretz Israel angels never leave. But according to Yaakov's honor, they did an exception. They left Eretz Israel in order to greet Yaakov as he was showing up. And number two, besides the fact that they came into Chutz La'aretz, Sheterem istalek machanei Chutz La'aretz baru machanei Eretz Israel v'hayasham shtei machnot yachad. The two groups were overlapping. They didn't just completely do changing of the guards. The new ones came, the old ones left straight away. There was a situation then where both groups were hanging out together. This is a very strange thing, because why does I guess obviously when you have a group of angels, they are a group large enough to accompany Yaakov for in all levels, spiritually, physically, whatever the angels were doing for him. So why now that they had the double entourage, it's a great honor that he's got an extra large fleet of angels and bodyguards. So that was a great message to Yaakov about Hashem's pleasure of him and his standing in heaven. ולשם התאמר למה אני תוסף לו את הכבוד הזה אך האחד שטרם עלות אשר איתו בארץ ישראל והשני כשם בתחילה לא רצו לצאתך ארץ יעשו למענו. Why is this honor happening to him, that the angels are leaving the first time, even on the way out of Eretz Israel? Yaakov Avinu didn't have the angels come out with him. Says Rav Moshe, L'zeh amar Yaakov halach l'darko. Yaakov is going, well, where's he going? L'darko, to his way. What's the way of Yaakov? The way into holiness. That's the path, the Yaakov Avinu path, into Eretz Israel. Ki b'yoto b'Har Moriah, and the way out, when he was in Har Moriah, lo hayach l'darko mityaches lo l'Eretz Israel, rak l'chutz la'aretz hepech shorsho. Yaakov Avinu was holy. So when he was going on the outbound journey, when he was in Har Moriah, at the time he was going not l'darko. It wasn't his way. Going into Chutz La'aretz isn't the Yaakov way. It's the opposite. It's the Chutz La'aretz Tumah way. But now that he's coming back, now it's holech l'darko. He's going into Eretz Israel. Al ken vayivgeu bo malachei Elohim, which is why the angels are coming to greet him in this great manner. This is why it says the word pegia, which means that he saw them walking down the street and he bumped into them, as opposed to seeing them suddenly appear out of thin air. Says Ramosh, a very fascinating thing. Where do angels appear? When we see an angel, where did they come down? We don't see an angel. When Yaakov saw the angel, where did they come from? Where did they come down to earth? At which part of the world? Where did they come? The gates of heaven is where? In Har Moriah. That's where all the prayers go up, and all the angels go up, and all the angels go down. It's like the elevator coming down, up and down from earth to heaven. So that's where the angels came out. And then they started their journey from there until the border of Eretz Israel. ואז בוודאי בארץ ישראל ירדו, משם באו נגד יעקב ויפגעו בו. So they were already down, they already came down earlier on, and then they came towards him כאיש הבא לקראת חברו, להגביל פניו, as one would come to greet his friend, and they basically gave him this honor of coming out to greet him. It says Ramosha v'hu, he hears that. He noticed that these angels were Eretz Israel angels. So Jacob had angels with him until then. But those angels were Chutz La'aretz angels. They weren't Malachei Elohim. They were just Malachim. So when Yaakov saw them, he said, Malachei Machanei Elohim zeh. These are Eretz Israel angels. Wow, they're coming out towards me in Chutz La'aretz to greet me. This is beautiful. And he's saying, why is this called Moshe? Why is Machanei Elohim referred to Eretz Israel angels? Machanei Merkava miyuchadim leElohim. The angels of Eretz Israel are the chariot of Hashem's revelation, which is Eretz Israel. Moshe, can you give me a tissue maybe somewhere?
Yeah.
Thank you. And that's why he's called them Malachei Elohim. Vehem Malachei Eretz Israel Be'etzem, they're actually holy angels. And he's wondering to himself, how did these angels come out to Chutz La'aretz before I've crossed over the Yabok crossing, that which is in the entrance to Eretz Israel? That's one wonder. That's one wonder that he has. Another wonder is, why wasn't there a regular occurrence where the old angels leave and then the new angels come, as happened when he was leaving Eretz Israel? It says the old angels olim, and then vayordim, or at least simultaneously. There wasn't ever a time that they were both there the whole time. They were both there at the same time as each other. So he's wondering, why is this unique experience happening to him? Okay, that's why vayikran makomahu machanaim. He was so impressed by this experience of having holy Eretz Israel angels come out to him to Chutz La'aretz, as well as having two groups of angels simultaneously with him at the same time. He therefore called the place Machanayim. What does Machanayim mean? The double Machaneh of angels, two Machaneh of angels, and which is what is that special, unique. So we'll leave it here, Bezrat Hashem, and we'll continue next time. It's an annoying cold. So you heading out now to Mincha?
No.
I'm just heading out.
It's cold.
Oh.
It's not cold.
Yeah, it's that time of the year, huh?
Yeah.
I just stopped smoking cigarettes for a few days, and suddenly I've got cough, and throat, and cold. I just keep smoking. Oh, maybe it's starting to heal, right? Is that
Exactly.
right? Well, I can just say, let's stop. Let's continue.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, everyone. So we're continuing with Tzfat Hashem and the Alshech and Parashat Vayishlavh. And Rav Moshe is telling us in this parasha now, he's actually going back to the end of last week's parasha, where Yaakov is met with new angels, and he explains, and Rashi brings there that these were the Eretz Israel angels coming out to greet him in order to accompany him into Eretz Israel, as this was his destination right now. And something very unique happened, that both angels remained together. Both groups of angels, the Chutz La'aretz angels and the Eretz Israel angels, remained with him at the same time. The old ones didn't leave. So says Rav Moshe as follows: Ki im haya bilvad al bi'ato la'aretz. So Yaakov Avinu paid attention to this strange event, that he said, if the only reason I'm getting a new group of angels is because I'm now moving into Eretz Israel and the old ones are no longer relevant, I'm getting Eretz Israel angels, then the old ones should have left. But the fact that the old ones didn't leave, Yaakov was like, why do I have a surplus angel group? Must be that these angels are here to serve a purpose, which are going to help me come into Eretz Israel. And then suddenly the light bulb moment came, and he was like, hey, I'm coming into Eretz Israel, I need to start appeasing Esav. That must be what these angels are for. Al ken amar b'libo ki ein zeh. The purpose is ki Hashem chafetz. Hashem wants afayes et Esav ala brachot shenatalti imenu. And this was all coming because he was under the impression that he had to appease Esav. This wasn't actually true. Yaakov didn't have to know this, but Hashem didn't necessarily want him to appease Esav. But Yaakov understood this to mean a message from Hashem to use these angels, that he should use them to appease Esav. That I should send them to Esav to to calm his fury down. Al-Ken Vayishlavh Yaakov malachim. And this segues into this week's parsha, that he sent these malachim. Which malachim? Klomar shel chutz la'aretz, hanikraim malachim stam, v'lo malachei Elohim. Last week's parasha, he says Yaakov suddenly came across the Eretz Israel angels. They are called Machanei Elohim, Malachei Elohim. But Malachim, regular Malachim, which Malachim are they? They're the Chutz La'aretz Malachim. V'tam Elotam Malachim lefanav v'lo anashim, kiven b'omro lefanav. So now we're going to see why actually he had to send the angels. But we saw at least that Yaakov saw this as a message from Hashem to use these angels for the purpose of calming Esav. Oh yeah, Merva, Yom Yaakov kasher ra'am merachok. Hinei malachim hu zeh shelefanai. Shem malachim chutz la'aretz shemi gam hu. Lama ba'u elu acherim. So here, Rosh is saying a slightly different understanding of the psukim last week's parasha. Vayomer Yaakov kasher ra'am. When Yaakov saw the new angels coming, he said, Machanei Elohim zeh. I already have a group of angels with me, i.e. the Chutz La'aretz angels. So why when the new angels showed up, they were intended, said Yaakov assumed that they were intended to send the old ones to Esav. So the only thing he changed was what the Machanei Elohim, is that referring to the new angels or old angels? But this,
you're saying that God gave him the extra set of angels to send to Esav. But
No,
you're saying that he didn't want him to appease him either. So why would he want him to send the angels?
it seems to be from Ramosha here that it's the other way around. Hashem wanted to show him that that he was so worthy and he didn't have anything to fix in life. He was like he shouldn't worry about the brachot. So he gave him just extra honor, extra, not necessarily to use them, extra kavod. That's what he says early on when Yaakov came to say, Kibdoit barach kavod gadol. Hashem was trying to give him kavod with all of this extra angels that they came out to greet him, etc. And that could be actually was supposed to be interpreted the other way around. That I don't have nothing to worry about. Look how much Hashem is honoring me. But Yaakov understood it because he already had the doubt in his mind. That's how he interpreted it, right? That's what we always do. Like you have an angle, and then everything that happens is we just feed into that presumption. Oh yeah, Amer. Vayomer Yaakov b'som lev amar Yaakov lemala im yiyeh Elohim imadi. So if you go back.
Wait, sorry, can I just interrupt you there? At that point in time, he comes into Eretz Israel. At that point in time, Esau is not chasing him.
Right. Yeah, that's what we mentioned before. Ramosh is gonna ask later on why he suddenly felt the need to awaken the sleeping bear.
Right.
I mean, you could understand.
Is Holy Alshech suggesting that really the extra angels were just to accompany him, and then Yaakov should have just gone straight to home,
right?
Instead of going to try to appease Esau.
Yeah, that seems to be the general. I mean, he's not necessarily saying it here about the fact that he shouldn't have used them, but he did start off by saying that Yaakov was mistaken in his uncertainty whether he did the right thing. And later on, we're going to see that he's going to ask, even if you do feel that you have issue to deal with your brother, you don't have to do it. You don't have to awaken him unless he's coming to you, and then you can try and deal with it, but not to awaken the sleeping bear. That's always an interesting one. So Moshe says as follows. Earlier on, when Yaakov was leaving Eretz Israel, he has the dream and he falls asleep, and then in the morning he erects a altar and he pours oil on it, and he prays to Hashem, and he says, if Hashem will be with me and he will look after me, im yiyeh Elohim imadi, v'shmarani b'derech hazeh, he'll protect me on this journey, then I will serve him and I will give tithe all of my things, etc. But this seems to be very difficult to understand, because just a pasuk before that we see the message that Hashem told him in his dream, and Hashem is telling him, I'll be with you and I'll protect you. So why does the next morning he wake up and say, if Hashem will be with me?
That's right.
Questioning whether Hashem's going to carry out his promise. Achinei, Hashem hamavticho az haya Hashem harachamim. This is a very interesting thing. It says, V'hinei Hashem nitzav alav, this was the Yud Kei Vav Kei. Ka'omro v'hinei Hashem nitzav alav, ani havaya Elokei Avraham. Again, this is a Yud Kei Vav Kei talking to him. And then Yud Kei Vav Kei was saying, Ani anochi imach, I'm going to be with you and protect you. Shehu api midat harachamim. But, says Ramosha, having protection from midat harachamim isn't always enough. V'neinei lefamim midat hadin mekatreget. Midat hadin can sometimes expect and demand justice and strictness more than Rachamim wants to give, and then it causes problems. Like we know that, for example, b'makom sakana, if a person's going on a journey and if he's in a state of danger, then the midat hadin has an extra strength to cause problems. So now Yaakov Avinu felt that even though Yud Kei Vav Kei told me that he's going to look after me, but what if I'm going to be in a situation that Midat Hadin will say that I'm not undeserving? V'ashrei, says Ramoshe, v'ashrei mi sha'af Midat Hadin tetivlo. The even better place to be, this is a very worthy, beautiful place to be in, situation to be in, that Midat Hadin is happy to give you good, because you're so worthy of good that even the strictest judgment, you come out worthy. Al ken amar im yeh Elohim imadi. If midat hadin will be find me worthy, ushmarani, then I will be even happier. So basically, he's saying that Moshe is saying that even after the promise from midat harachamim, Yaakov Avinu wanted to make sure that midat hadin also is going to protect him. Now that Yaakov Avinu is heading back into Eretz Israel, Gam shera'a kavod hagadol hazeh, sheba'u malachei Elohim lakbil panav. He saw that the angels are coming towards him, so he understood that there's a special protection and honoring coming from Hashem. But Amar kasher ra'am, when he saw the malachei Elohim coming to him, he didn't yet feel calm, because he said Machanei Elohim zeh, this is angels of midat hadin. V'ulai al pi midat hadin eini batuach. Maybe this is not going to help me, because midat hadin is not going to protect me. Ki enan malachei rachamim. Kanodam Sefer HaZohar, another Zohar Moshe brings, is that there's ki yesh kitot miyuchadot al midat hadin. There's angels that are specifically connected to the midat hadin angels, not to the midat harachamim. So therefore, v'hinei ra'a l'umat zeh kavod gadol, ki hamakom hazeh hu machanayim, ki lo nasu mizeh machanay achat. Al ken haya b'safek im hu yiskim hu yitbarach imo b'barachot im lo. Al ken vayishlach malachim. So Ramosh is saying, because Yaakov Avinu, on the one hand, he knew that he's getting special honor and special Eretz Israel angels coming out to greet him, and he has two groups of angels at the same time. But when he took note of which kind of angels they are, he saw they are Malachei Elokim, which is Midat Hadin angels, and he wasn't sure if on a level of Midat Hadin he will come out worthy of being saved, which is why he felt the need to go out and appease Esav, because he wasn't sure himself whether he was right when it came to Midat Hadin in taking the brachot, right? Because
when he did that tonight for the blessing, so if you take care of me, didn't that give him the assurances that he was looking for?
Well, Hashem didn't reply to that prayer. He was kind of praying, like, I thank you, Hashem, for the Midat HaRachamim promise, but I want to pray for even more.
Yeah.
But it doesn't say that Hashem said, okay, cool, yeah, you got that as well.
I thought, okay.
That was like after the dream, the next day. That was like a prayer.
Okay.
So now when he comes back, and it makes sense, because Midat Hadin, if you think about it, it's not such a just thing to steal your brother's brachot. The way he did it wasn't a midat hadin way of doing things. So it's understandable that he should be a bit scared of whether he'll be exonerated from this whole situation. So now we're going to understand, Rav Moshe is going to bring a bunch of reasons why Yaakov used angels in this situation. So even though he's getting this hint that Hashem wants him to use these angels, but we're also going to see another few reasons why he used angels specifically. We know that these angels were Chutz La'aretz angels, and not Malachei Elohim, which are Eretz Israel angels. So now we're going to read in the pasuk itself, says Rav Moshe, we're going to take note of all the specific words used here, and they are going to be an actual explaining why he used angels. So first of all is Venatan Arba o Chamishat Hamim. There's 4 or 5 reasons he used angels. Vahu. Number 1, Kibal hachin atzmo lepiyus o lemilchama o tefillah v'doron. There was 4 things he was trying to do here. First, he sent the first group of angels to appease him. The next step was war tactics. Then he went into prayer mode, and number 4 was actually gifts. So really, it's one, and then the next. And when that didn't work, the appeasement didn't work, he went into plan B, which includes a 3-step plan. And he realized that why is he sending angels now? Because he realized that now Hashem, he's got a favorable hashgacha pratit from Hashem right now, by the fact that he sees that he's got double portion of angels, and that was showing him that this is a good time, that his star is shining, kind of thing, and this is the time that he can try and capitalize on this energy that he has right now as an et ratzon to pray and get this situation sorted. וגם היה נחוץ לעבור מעבר יבוק לארץ ישראל. He also had to make sure, another reason why he was rushed, and he had to use angels, because angels are swift. So Ramosh is going to explain, he's using angels in order to get this done quickly. Why is this time of essence here? 2 reasons. First of all, because it was a special et ratzon, and they wanted the et ratzon to still be active while this was happening. Number 2 is that he's trying to get into Eretz Israel as soon as possible, and he wanted to go into Eretz Israel after he's appeased Esav already. So therefore he sent angels that it should get done quickly. But why did he have to get into Eretz Israel quickly? Says Rav Moshe, Lebal akev sham malachei Eretz Israel harbe. So he says, even though the Eretz Israel angels came out to Chutz La'aretz to greet him, but that doesn't mean that they want to stay out there for too long. They want to get back as soon as possible. And therefore, he's like, let's get this over done as quick as possible. As we'll see later on, after the angels come back to him, and they say that he's not coming, that he's not appeased, so he started heading back into Eretz Israel, and then it says that he woke up in the night. In the middle of the night, he woke up, and he crossed the Ma'avar Yabok. And the Yabok crossing was actually the entrance into Eretz Israel. That was the border into Eretz Israel. And Rav Moshe says that's why he did that in the middle of the night, as soon as possible. Lebal akev sham malachei Israel arbeh, v'lo himtin ad haboker. He didn't wait until the morning. And Rav Moshe says we're going to get into that pasuk later on, but for now we just mention the fact that it was like a matter of urgency to get the whole process expedited. He said to himself, "En ze tzarich boshesh." We can't let this matter take too much time. If I send humans away a 3-day journey until they get there and come back, it's going to take way too long. You've got to use angels. Ki malach echad, says Rav Moshe, how large is a malach? A malach is the size of a third of the world. Shlisha shel olam. The pasuk says in Daniel, Ugviyato k'tarshish. His body is like tarshish, which usually means some kind of stone. But the Midrash says tarshish can be read Trei Shesh, which is 2/6. And 2/6 is a third. Ba'ofen sheb'psiya achat, because they're so large, just one step in the direction of Esav, and they're there already. V'zeh amro teida lama vayishlach malachim leman odam lefanav him el Esav b'li ichur. So he's saying, this is how you should read the pasuk. Vayishlach Yaakov malachim. Yaakov sent angels. Why did he send angels? Because lefanav el Esav. The same second that they're in front of him, they already reached Esav because they're so large. And this is the reason number one that he used angels and not humans. Od tam sheni v'hu el Esav achiv ki shtei bechinot lot. There's two aspects to Esav. Echad to Esav ki rashahu. Esav means he's a rasha. Ve'evrato shemar netzach, and therefore he's harboring all of this anger and hate inside of his heart. As the pasuk he's bringing here in Amos says that Edom keeps the hate and anger harbored for a long time. Bechina shenit achiv, and maybe he's not, but the truth is, besides him being Esav, he's also a brother. So maybe he actually forgave me already. Maybe he's calmed down. Maybe he's decided to forgive him. But often tzarich malachim yavchinu asher belibo im tovim ra. Yaakov had to send angels. Why? Because he wasn't sure whether Esav is going to act like Esav or he's going to act like the brother. And only angels are able to detect the human mind and heart, even though a person can put on the best poker face, the angel will be able to see through all of that. That's why he had to have malachim to check out whether he has good intentions or bad intentions. If a human would go, they wouldn't be able to detect whether Esav is hiding a big smile with hate harbored inside. He would be able to hide the hatred, and that would be undetectable to humans. So this is why it says El Esav achiv, in order to determine whether he's Esav or he's achiv. That's reason number 2. Number 3, why did Esav use angels? Arza Seir Sedei Edom. Arza Seir means this is Esav's civilized area of Esav town, his capital city. But Esav was actually an outdoors person. He could be out playing golf, or he could be hunting, or he could be, going camping out in nature. And if you send humans, they wouldn't know where to go. They'll try his house first, and then they'll try his holiday house, and then they'll have to go searching through the woods. Maybe he's hunting. So he sent malachim, so they know exactly where he is, and they don't have to start running around looking for him in all the different possible occasions he might be. Pam bebeito lo yishkenu raglav, pam b'chutz, b'snei Edom, pam b'seir. Sometimes he's home, sometimes he's out of house, which is why humans wouldn't know where to go. They would have to start taking a long time searching for him. This is going back to the first reason we said, which is what we wanted to expedite the process. But he had to expedite the process not only with the journey there, but even when they got there, to be able to detect and know where to actually head when they get to the general location. Reason number 4. Why did we mention the fact that he went to Esav, who is in Seir and Edom? Esav specifically called his country and his area that he ruled and lived in by these names. Why? Because he wanted to have an eternal memory and remembrance of the wrongs that Yaakov did to him. And that's why he called Seir. Why was his city called Seir? Because that was when Yaakov put on the goat skin in order to feel that his father should feel hairy skin when he touches him. As the pasuk says, Hayadav kidei Esav achiv seirot. Umisteimat ha'bechora asher hi al yedei ha'adom ha'adom. right? Because Esav had two things that he was angry at Yaakov about: him stealing the blessings and him taking advantage of him and buying the firstborn right. And which is why the birthright happened through Edom, through a red soup. And the brachot was taken through hairy goat skin. So which is why Esav called his city Seir and the area was Edom, in order to remind himself and to have a constant memory of the hatred he has to Yaakov. She is called Edom ba'ofen shimayu anashim mistaknim. That's another reason why he couldn't send humans, because Esav is never going to forget. Esav is unpredictable. If you would send him humans, and these humans say we're the messengers of Yaakov, we know that Esav doesn't forget. We know that Esav is living in constant anger. Why? Because he has his cities called. His cities are called names of anger towards Yaakov. And therefore, in order to prevent the humans from being killed, he had to send angels. So basically he's saying this is another reason why he had to send angels, because it was just to save human life. So obviously the angels agreed to be used in order to protect innocent humans from being killed by Esav's wrath. Well, Peter Kor Ramaz Tam Elayot Malachi Chutz La'aretz Ba'omro Arza Se'ir Sedei Edom Shul Chutz La'aretz Ve'en Yishlach Sham Shel Eretz Yisrael. It's another reason why the pasuk mentions Esav's location, because we're explaining why Yaakov sent the Chutz La'aretz angels specifically. He could have sent, if he's got two groups of angels, Hashem made sure he has two groups, so you could have sent either one of them. Why specifically is he sending Vayishlavh Yaakov Malachim, the regular Malachim, not the Malachei Elohim, the Israeli angels, the Eretz Israel angels? And the reason is because it's going to Arza Se'er Edom, which is Chutz La'aretz. We don't want to send the Eretz Israel angels to go further into Chutz La'aretz. And we want, even though they came out to greet him, they want to go back to Eretz Israel. They don't want to be hanging out in Chutz La'aretz doing other things. Od Tam Chamishi, another fifth reason that Ramosh is going to explain to us why he used angels. It says, Vayitzav otam lemor, v'hu kinei Yaakov hayachoshesh pen alav chiyuv ha'brachot. Yaakov was worried about the fact, like we said before, he was worried about the fact that he's guilty in the fact that he stole the blessings. And he wants to make sure to appease Esav for what he did to him. Ubekesh lefayes et ba'alehen. Ach hu yitbarach hikpid al Yaakov. Yaakov was actually doing this and subjugating himself to Esav, but Hashem didn't agree with this approach. Kumamaram, as the Midrash, the Chazal say, al pasuk va'at limadutam alayich alufim lerosh, that the pasuk says that Hashem wasn't so happy with making Esav be on top of him. So therefore, that's what we're going to say in a minute. But these angels Yaakov actually wanted to use the angels so that the angels should tell him whether he's doing the right thing or not. Because Ramosh is saying as follows: from the fact that we see that the Midrash and the rabbis are telling us that Yaakov made a mistake here by sending these angels, first of all, because he was right for taking the blessings. He didn't have to worry that the blessings were taken and he was wrong for that. And another thing he didn't have to worry is because either way, you don't want to wake up the sleeping bear. And this is what the Midrash says, that it brings a pasuk in Mishlei. If you start waking up the sleeping dog, right? Hashem is not so happy that he's like sending him all these gifts and basically making him angry again and reawakening, making the waters murky. So basically what we're saying is that Yaakov Avinu, he himself, obviously, if it's such a mistake that he made, can't be that he was so confident in his decision. he obviously wanted to reach some clarity whether this was the right thing to do or not. So what did he do? He sent angels. And he said as follows. So meaning, where does the uncertainty come from? Kigam Yaakov hayaka mistapek omer b'libo. Yaakov had a question. He was uncertain what to do. Lu chafetz Hashem lanichem b'yad Esav. He should have said, Lama hiranit kol zot shnei malachim malachav yitbarach. Hashem, the fact that Hashem sent me two angels, that should indicate that Hashem is going to protect me, and He doesn't want me to die, and I'm in His good books, and therefore that's why he wasn't sure. He's like, maybe I shouldn't do this. The angels knew that he shouldn't be afraid. Even though they didn't tell him that, but they knew it. He wanted to get the angels to tell him this. He's basically telling the angels, speaking to them as if he's very, very afraid. But he wasn't sure whether he should be afraid. He wasn't, meaning his main concern wasn't because he was scared of Esav's brutal strength and anger. He was scared maybe because on a spiritual level, he deserves to be punished because he's actually guilty in stealing the brachot. So meaning he wasn't scared of the natural consequences of having an angry tyrant wanting to kill him. He was scared whether in Shamayim there was judgments against him, whether Midat Hadin had the ability to cause judgments against him, and that's why he wanted to do a little test. He was planning to test the waters with these angels, and he was going to show these angels the fact that he's really scared, and he wanted to see what the angels reply. He said, to see maybe the angels will just say, give him the pep talk. He was happy to get the pep talk from the angels. And they would say to him, do you not realize that Hashem's here to protect you? That you have nothing to worry? Look, you have a double group of angels. Hashem's mom is trying to protect you and give you honor. If Hashem wouldn't want to protect you, then why would He send you double group of angels? Obviously, He's trying to protect you. And why are you afraid? And Yaakov was prepared to say, if this is what the angels' response is, I'm calm. Yaakov was like, I'm prepared to accept that Hashem wants to protect me. I just don't know if He wants to protect me or not, or whether I need to be punished. So therefore, the imnafachu gam ken nigalu ozno. Basically, Yaakov wanted to ask the angels. This whole elaborate mission he gave them was, in other words, asking them whether the mission should be carried out or not. But what did they do? They just didn't tell him. They didn't tell him. We'll see in a minute why they didn't tell him. But before that, Ramosha puts it into the pasuk. He says, if you read the pasuk now, it's very interesting. Vayitzav otam lemor. What does that mean? Vayitzav otam v'lo Hashem. He spoke to who? To the angels. Lemor, that they should tell him. Lemor doesn't mean they should tell Esav. Lemor, they should tell Yaakov. Meaning, I'm giving you this message to give to Esav, but my main intention with giving you this message to give to Esav is that you should reply to me whether this is a necessary step. If he would send humans obviously can't tell him whether he should be afraid of Esav. They don't know better than him. If Yaakov doesn't know, how does anyone else know? But the angels should have told him, or could have told him. That's what he wanted to accomplish. This is a very interesting approach from Ramosha that answers a few of the questions here. Why Yaakov was afraid? He wasn't afraid, because he was just scared of a superpower called Esav that had advanced weaponry. He was scared of the fact that maybe he's deserving of punishment because of his involvement in shrieking Esav with the brachot. So now, why did the angels in fact not reply to him and tell him not to be afraid, as we just saw in the Zohar and the Midrashim, that Hashem wasn't so happy with what he did? Because the angels said, Ki hu yitbarach yistir mimenu. If Hashem's deciding not to tell him, gam hema yistir. They're not going to go and break the chain of the hierarchy of command in Hashem, and say like, oh, if Hashem's not telling him the truth, Hashem's deciding to leave it up to his decision, then we're not also not going to say anything. But why did Hashem actually not tell him anything? Ramosh is going to tell us later that Hashem was actually already a punishment for the fact that Yaakov should have simply trusted Hashem's promise. He should have just gone with the promise without any questioning of whether now he's unworthy and now this and that, because Hashem gave him the promise after he took the brachot. So if Yaakov would have been more straightforward, then he wouldn't have to even get any kind of worry in his head. All right, and sometimes we have the situation where we're thinking, okay, I'm trusting Hashem, but who says Hashem wants me to be protected? Right, and that's it's always like a bitachon is that obviously Hashem wants good. Hashem's main purpose is to give us good because he made us live. Right, if Hashem wanted us to die, we would die. We wouldn't wake up this morning. Generally speaking, Hashem wants to always give people good and make them happy, and give them life, and that's why he sustains the entire world and sustains the Jewish people and sustains every individual. So there's the general approach is that we know that Hashem wants us to have good, and to start worrying that maybe I'm deserving, we're always deserving of good. Obviously, we have to. Hashem wants to remind us to do teshuvah, so He sends us messages, etc. But it's not. Hashem never wants us to suffer, as the famous song goes now that everybody's singing is. Ki Hashem Yitbarach, right? Tamid yeh li rak tov. But Yaakov didn't have the simple emunah, and actually it's interesting. The Malbim, and this pasuk says that Yaakov was actually frustrated with himself when he saw that he doesn't have emunah. He says. The Malbim says, "Vayira Yaakov mo'od." Yaakov was scared. Vayetzer lo, and he was hurt. He was frustrated that he actually didn't have emunah. He was angry at himself, kind of thing. He was like, "Why don't I have emunah? Why am I scared? If I'm honest with myself, I'm listening to my heart rate, and it's going up. My heart is beating at 1,000 beats a minute because of this fear." So he said, "If I'm actually scared, I need to go and do measures." Because Hashem protects a person as much as they trust Hashem, right? That's what they say. Like as much as we put our trust into Hashem, that's how much shtadlut we need to do when it comes to protection in health, and it comes to paranasa, and protection in wartime. Every person needs to be very honest with themselves how much emunah they have, and accordingly, we can go out and act. In this level that we're holding by. But Yaakov Avinu in this situation didn't have the 100% emunah, which is why Rav Moshe says Hashem decided to actually punish him and leave it up to him. It's like if you don't trust me simply, that if you want to get all complicated and wondering whether maybe you deserve it, Hashem says, okay, I'm going to leave you with that confusion. I'm not going to come and resolve that for you. Even though Yaakov wasn't doing it to spite Hashem, and he was actually confused. He didn't know, and that's why he was praying later on. We're going to see, or we're not going to get there, but this time around. But Yaakov, in his prayer, he's actually telling Hashem, like, I'm not sure what I should be doing here. We even know from the fact that he did the gifts and the war and the prayer. Meaning Yaakov was in a very big dilemma. But because he didn't just go have simple faith, is why Hashem decided to leave him in the dark. And because the angels, are here to serve Hashem, they also decided to join Hashem's efforts in not revealing to Yaakov what to do. They also continued the silence, they didn't break the silence. אצלי אחד מן הכוונות באומרו וישוב המלאכים על יעקב לאמור. כלומר, מה ששבו אליו לאמור הדברים הם כמיירים אותו. Right? So the truth is that the angels, if they knew the truth, that there was no fear of Esav and that Hashem is going to protect Yaakov, so why did the angels come back and give him a report that is going to make him scared? the report that's describing the imminent danger of Esav coming forward, it was only in his head, based on the way that he chose to not have simple emunah, is how the angels came and replied to him in kind with this fearful report. And that's why the pasuk says, Moshe, the pasuk says, "Vayishuvim malachim el Yaakov." One of the questions we had before was, why does it not just say "Vayishuvim malachim"? The angels returned and said that he's coming. Why does it say El Yaakov? To say that they knew that he shouldn't be scared, but they only said to him Leimor to Yaakov, that because Hashem wants him to be scared, Hashem wants him to remain in this state of uncertainty. That's why they spoke according to the protocol that Hashem wanted at that moment. Rak El Yaakov kedei lemor tshuva ayu advarim hahem lasot shluchat shlichuto. Meaning, this was all within Yaakov's sending of the Malachim, where he wasn't certain. But ach lo ken ha'emet meito yitbarach. The truth was that he wasn't supposed to be scared. So this is a very powerful message, actually, from Rav Moshe here. That a very powerful message that sometimes we can be in a situation where we decide, this is really, it's not only sometimes, every situation in life, like we were saying before, every situation in life, we get the messages, the reactions we have to events are always based on our internal level of emunah we have in Hashem. And if we have a strong, steadfast emunah in Hashem, then we don't get overwhelmed with the imminent danger that Iran is threatening, and the imminent rebels, and the imminent Hezbollah, and they're moving these weapons, and they're moving those weapons, and they said this and this had it's only you have a whole different reality when it comes to that. Shlomo, the battery exhausted, it says.
No.
Do we have another battery? Oh, it's charging. Is it charging?
Yeah, I can't understand why.
Maybe it's the adapter.
It's a brand new one, I just got it.
Does it show signs of charge? We're just having a issue with the other camera. We'll be back in a minute. So we'll just continue on that one.
No.
Ki Hashem yitbarach tamid ahavati tamid ani rakta. Ki Hashem yitbarach tamid ahavati tamid ani rakta. Ay adyadantam 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 adyadantam. Is it like a light that goes on when the charging is?
Okay, just So you should put that. No, it's
Okay, so we continue here. B'ezras Hashem. Maybe we have lots of energy. Should never be exhausted. It's interesting, I've never seen this expression, battery exhausted. It's like an interesting. Okay, so we continue the parasha, Vayishlavh otam lemor. So now we're going to go back to the discussion where Yaakov is actually wording the message that the angels should be mentioning to Yaakov. And the wording is very important here. Moshe is going to always, as he does, pay very close attention to the wording and explain what was Yaakov insinuating and expressing to Esav in this short statement.
Hold on 1 second, please. Where did this come from?
Oh, I just changed it around.
Oh, you changed it
just in
around.
case.
Oh, I see.
Just in case it was that. But then this worked in here, so I see it's not this at least.
But this was in here before,
Yeah.
right?
Isn't it?
Okay. Okay.
Okay. Says Ramosha as follows. יאמר כי הנה היה דעת יעקב להורות כי דברי הכנעתו אלה להפיס דעת עשיו בלבד היה ולא כן ליבו עמו. So this is a very interesting thing. Yaakov on the one hand wanted to put a very good show to Esav, that he's actually subjugating himself to him and that he sees himself as his servant and that Esav is really the superior one, etc. But he wanted to make sure that we knew that this isn't really how he felt. He didn't feel, he wasn't really, he wasn't really subjugating himself to Esav. He didn't think that Esav was a superior way of living, that Esav was actually the better brother. But rather, it was just something he was saying. He had to do it. He had to do it at the time. He wasn't. His heart wasn't in it. He was just saying it to appease him. So, he explains as follows, that sometimes Esav will worry. Esav's going to worry that this message that the angels are telling him is that they understand that there's supposed to be an appeasement here, right? That Yaakov is appeasing Esav. But they're going to embellish the words that they're using while they're communicating to Esav in a way that makes Esav give him the good feeling of being the master brother and giving him all the ego cuddling that he needs. Whereas Yaakov himself didn't really use these words. So Yaakov wants to make sure that Esav knows that even he himself used the words of humbling himself to Esav. So the following is important. Al ken chashav Yaakov pen yomar Esav mi yodea em Yaakov amar lemalachim Adoni Esav avdecha Yaakov. Right? What's the wording that Yaakov is telling him? He says, Ko tomrun la'adoni le'esav. Tell my master Esav. Ko amar avdecha Yaakov. This is what your servant Yaakov said. Now, they didn't have to use these words. It could be when Yaakov sent the angels, Esav can tell himself in his head, I know what words he used. He used every cuss word under the sun when he mentioned my name. He's like, go tell that Esav, bleep, 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 that I'm his servant. I'm gonna You're going to try and appease him. And obviously when they're going to repeat it to him, they're not going to use all the anger and disrespect that Yaakov had. They're going to obviously make it sound professional and politically correct. And they're going to say, yes, your servant. So Yaakov wanted to make sure that they repeat the message in a way that is clear that Yaakov used these words and he humbled himself. Yaakov himself used humiliating and subjugating words in order to appease Esav. Now this comes another step. Esav can say, I'm not appeased by the words he used now, because now he's trying to appease me, so obviously he's using these words. But how does he refer to me generally when he talks about me? Does he also use these words? That's why Yaakov used a bit of trickery here when he's told the angels to say to Esav, Vayitzav otam limor kod tomrun la'adoni le'Esav. It's almost, he's telling them, he's referring to Esav as his master, not within the message that he's talking to him. He's saying, say the following to Esav. And this is not actually what they're going to say. They only start this. The following is when they're going to start quoting him. But Yaakov already used the word "my master Esav," even in the part that wasn't part of the quote. And Yaakov is telling the angels, you should repeat to Esav even the part that's not part of the quote, meaning that he should get the impression that I use words like "my master Esav" when I speak to Esav about Esav all the time, because I really feel that he's my master, that he's the better half, that I really respect him. So I really want to appease him. על כן, על הראשונה סידר הדברים לאמור. כה אמר עבדך יעקב ויהי לי, והוא, כי דרך השליח לומר. Usually when someone's giving over a message, they don't repeat the words that the person says. They'll say, so-and-so said that he did this and he did that. Whereas Yaakov said, no, don't talk about me in third person. I want you to quote my words. Take my words, put them in quotations and repeat them to Esav. Don't say, Im Lavan hugar vaya'acher adata vayi lo shor v'chamor. And he's asking for favor in your eyes. No, he said, don't do that. Say rak lochach as if I'm speaking. V'zeh omro ko amar. Lomar kechol hayotze mepi alechem. Use these words exactly. Why? So that once Esav realizes that they're quoting his words, they'll see that in Yaakov's words itself was the mention of Esav being a master. It's not just that the messenger is embellishing the words, whereas Yaakov himself used disrespecting terms. He wanted to make sure that Esav knew this is how he spoke himself. But Esav can still suspect the level of respect that Yaakov has for him. When Yaakov refers to Esav in general, not when he's giving over a message of appeasement, maybe he doesn't talk about me in grandiose terms of respectfulness. The message only begins from Ko Amar Avdecha Yaakov. But I'm already using Adoni Esav in a non-message based part of the sentence. Meaning that's not what I'm, right? He's just saying, say the following to Esav. But when he's talking to them, he already uses the word, my master. He was trying to get the message across to Esav that even in his day-to-day discussions, he also mentions Esav by prefixing it with my master. He didn't just say talk to Esav, he said talk to my master. And that's why it says Vayitzav otam lemor. So this is a very, very beautiful pshat in the pasuk. Vayitzav otam lemor. He told them to say the following. He wants the angels to actually speak from here. He should already mention that they should mention to Esav already what Yaakov said before the message actually begins. And it means להורות כי גם בדברים שאינם מן השליחות, רק שאומר להם שאמרו לו, אמרו לאדוני עשיו. So that he gets the message that Yaakov always refers to Esav as my master. למען יראה כי גם בקרב ביתו לאדון הוא מחשיבו. גם כיוון פן יחושו מלאכים על כבוד יעקב, שלא יאמרו עבדך יעקב. And then this was another point he wanted to make sure that the angels, they might be uncomfortable with referring to Esav as the master and Yaakov as the servant. And therefore they want to respect Yaakov by not using all of these humiliating terms. He told them, he made sure that the angels know that the whole point of this discussion is to give Esav the honor that he wants and the respect that he feels he deserves. And the Chavanat Ha'inyan, now we're going to go into, besides the overall ego brushing that Esav was going to get from this, Yaakov also wanted to refer to the actual anger that Esav has on him, which is the fact that he stole the brachot, and he wanted to mention to him the fact that the brachot didn't even work. Why? Because the brachot were intended for Esav. So he wanted Esav to get the impression that the fact that Yaakov was physically there when the brachot were given was useless, because Yaakov, Yitzchak in his head was thinking about Esav, and the brachot went to the intended address, even if physically he wasn't there. So now, how is he going to do that? Ki halosh lo shalosh zugot hayu brachot. The brachot was split into 3 sections. Ha'echad shefa tova mital hashamayim shmanei haaretz. V'rov dagam v'tirash. The first one was physical and financial and bountiful wealth from the produce. Number 2, yavducha amim, the fact that you're going to have nations underneath you, subjugated to you. And number 3, al ha'achim, havi gevir la'achecha, that you are going to be, the one receiving the blessing is going to be the master over his brother. V'heichel me'acharon el harishon. He started off with the last section of the blessings, by the fact that the blessing says that you are the master. The blessing says that whoever receives the blessing is the master. And first of all, I'm showing you, you are the master. I'm bowing to you, I am your servant, the servant bows to his master. And it also says, the second bracha was, that the nations will serve you. That means other people besides brothers. I'm going to show you that Lavan, who's another nation, he's not our family, and instead of him serving me, which would have showed that I have received the blessings, Im Lavan garti ke'eved lo, I stayed by him and I served him. Right? And the fact that I had to be outdoors looking after sheep and suffering for 20 years living in Lavan conditions. So that you should get the idea that the blessings haven't showed up. And regarding the first part of the blessing, which was what? That I'm going to have bountiful produce and agriculture. That doesn't intend that I'm going to make money by working hard like a servant. That 20 years of work, obviously if you work hard for 20 years, you can amass some wealth with sheep and cows. But that's not what the blessing was. The blessing was that you'll be able to have farmland and property and be a landlord and be actually have people work for you. It's only because I was there for 20 years is why I have cows and sheep. This isn't from the blessing. This is a natural way of things, that if you work hard, you make some money. So basically, this was all part of his message, and the fact that he had wealth, Esav didn't have an issue with him having wealth. He had an issue with him taking away the brachot. And as long as he's showing him that his wealth isn't connected to the brachot, that would be good enough for Esav to calm down. I'm not trying to make you, the only reason I'm reaching out to you is not to show you the fact that what I have is taken from you. To show you that even though I have all of this is actually for you, because you're my master. Don't feel like I'm competition. I'm not trying to threaten you with all this wealth. You tell me what to do with it. I'm with you all the way. I'm actually here to use it in a way that you find fit, and if you tell me to give it to you, I'll give it to you. Everything that an eved has, everything that a servant has, his master owns. This is actually mentioned in the Midrash. He actually in the end gave it to him. When it says that he bought his part in the Amarat Machpelah, and he paid Esav for his part, well, what did he give him? He gave him all of the wealth that he amassed in Lavan's house. And he said, the wealth that I received in Chutz La'aretz is worthless. I don't want it. I don't want all of this American money. Right? The famous thing about the house of Lavan being the White House. It's like where in America is the place to get money to come back to Eretz Yisrael with it. Yaakov Avinu was on that level that he didn't want Chutz La'aretz money to live with in Eretz Yisrael. So basically, that was his message to Esav, that you're my servant, I'm your servant, you're my master, and all that I have isn't from the brachot, and whatever I do have, I'm happy to do whatever you want with. I'm here to serve you. So, but now we're going to address the fact. Says Ramoshe, an interesting thing. Why did Yaakov act with such humility and subjugation to Esav, even though the rabbi is not so happy about that? They say that Hashem wasn't happy about that. Hashem wasn't happy with Yaakov's way of behaving. That he humiliated himself in front of Esav like that. Ve'efshar kivnu Rabbeinu l'rmos k'tzat svara leYaakov b'davar. It seems that the rabbi is actually trying to explain why Yaakov did do it with the following Gemara and the Medrash that mentions the following story. B'sapra Maseh Shaya, there was a story as follows: Yechtiv Rabbi k'tav l'Keisar al yedei Rabbi Afas. Rabbi Afas was the Talmud of Rabbi Yehuda Nasi, the prince, and he told him to write a letter to the Caesar, to the Roman Caesar. And the original draft of the letter said the following: from Yehuda, the Jewish chief Nasi, Lemaran Malka Antoninus, to the king Antoninus. V'kara Rabbi etaktav. Rabbi wasn't happy with the wording. He tore it up. V'amar, and he said the following: V'chi ani atav masavi. Am I any better than my grandfather? She'amar avdecha Yaakov. When he spoke to Esav, he said, your servant Esav. V'tziva lechtov, and he said to change the wording, and he said, Mini avdecha Yehuda, from your servant Yehuda the Jew, Lemaran Malka Antoninus, to the great king Antoninus. So this is the story the Medrash brings. What is the Medrash trying to teach us with this story? Lo chinam sipru lanu maseh shahadin, just tell us the story. Ela kivnu sheYaakov asa lelamed et zaro b'galut hachel hazeh. Yaakov Avinu himself didn't have to be subjugated to Esav on that level. But as we know, everything that Avot did was to teach us how to produce, projecting out the future generations. So Esav, we know, is the Edom, which is the Romans. So Yaakov was teaching us how to deal with the Romans. You have to give them the feeling that they're in charge and show subjugation. Right? That was the whole issue with the Zealots. Right? They caused the temple to be destroyed because the rabbis, the Pharisees, were very intended upon being, under the Romans, accept their rule, not revolt. And the Zealots were like, we're going to fight them tooth and nail. But they received this wisdom from Yaakov that with Esav, we don't try and, we don't go head to head. If we're under Esav's galut, we have to bow down to him. Asher en lahem aftachot shayu lo. So Yaakov Avinu, he had the promises from Hashem, but that he's going to be protected. But what he was doing then wasn't from his own fear. It was mainly to show the grandchildren how to behave. Rabbi actually learned from Yaakov, and I guess we learn from Rabbi and from Yaakov, or in the past we did, and now we still have to beg America for stuff. But you have to respect them, and that's the way to do it, as long as we're still under there, and we need them for help. ודברו אליו יתברך כאשר יבוא את זאת השמיים. והנה במדרש. There's a very interesting midrash here that Ramosh is going to bring to us. And we're going to finish with this B'ezrat Hashem. That the pasuk says, Vayihili shor. I had an ox. It says in the midrash, who's the ox? Zeh Yosef. Sheyatza mimenu Yehoshua shemakeh ba'Amalek. Right? Amalek is a descendant of Esav. So he's telling him, I have an ox, and this ox is going to be killing your grandchildren. V'chamor, ze Yisachar. Yisachar, what's Yisachar? Sheyotzim mimeno, sheyodim ma HaKadosh Baruch Hu oseh b'olamo. Yisachar is going to have grandchildren that know what Hashem is doing in His world. Shenema u'bnei Yisachar yodei bina leitim ledat ma yaseh Hashem u'ma yaseh Israel. This is a pasuk in Divrei HaYamim, that the offspring of the offspring of Yisachar, so the Rav Moshe is adding a few words into the pasuk. The pasuk says, "Ladat ma yaseh Israel," to teach the Jews how they should behave. But Rav Moshe is adding in ma yaseh Hashem, meaning they know what Hashem wants from us to do. So that's what they tell the Jews, what Hashem wants them to do, to tell us what He wants from us. V'tzon, and I have sheep. So Yaakov, what is that? Elu Yisrael. V'shenem v'aten tzoni. That's the Jews are my, Hashem says that you are my sheep. Ve'eved ze David shenemar ani avdecha ben amatecha. I am a servant, son of your maidservant. V'shivcha zo Avigail shenemar hine amatcha l'shivcha. Ad kan, this is the midrash. V'hine mamar hazeh omer darsheni ki kulo mukshe. What's going on? What's this whole? What does this mean? Omnam hine huksha lo amro yeshor v'chamor. Why does it say I had an ox, a donkey? I have oxen, I have donkeys. Lashon yachid. Why does it say it singular? The Rashi zal nitchak al shem amin. The Rashi, if he wants to stay close to the pshat, the Rashi says shor means I have oxen, but I have the mean, like I have the species of ox. But he's referring to more than one. Rashi actually also brings that Shor v'chamor is Yosef, right? No, it doesn't. It's just a famous midrash. But Rashi says Shor v'chamor, the normal way of saying I have many oxen is to say I have ox. I have ox. But he says Rav Moshe ach rabbeinu darshu al machunim b'torim elu. The rabbi says referring to those who are nicknamed with these types of species. So the first thing is Yosef. So what's he saying here? He's saying that even though I'm showing lots of humility towards you, but you should know I'm not actually scared of you, because I have a lot of force with me to fight you. Because number one, Vayihili shor Yosef. Why is Yosef? Yosef specifically is the one to go against Esav. The moment Yosef was born, Yaakov said, I'm ready to leave, because I already have the power of Yosef. He wasn't any more afraid of Esav. Why? Where did we see Yosef actually fighting Esav? Yeshua was the one to fight Amalek. And Yosef is referred to as an ox. It's interesting because it actually says this. It says that the offspring of Amalek will only be destroyed with the offspring of Rachel. That's why Esther and Mordechai were from Shevet Binyamin at that time, and Shaul as well, who was supposed to fight Amalek, was also Shevet Binyamin. But here we're talking specifically about Yosef. V'shema tomar en ze rak bimei Moshe. Only in the time of Moshe they'll be able to overcome Amalek. Shekasher yavrim Moshe yado v'gavar Yisrael. Moshe Rabbeinu had great power to get the Jews to do teshuvah, as we know from the Mishnah that when Moshe raised his hand, the Jews were able to win. Achachrei Moshe. What are the Jews going to do when they sin? And they're now going to be faced with the challenge of Amalek. Because Edom are now going to come and fight them. Kihur tzuat malkut Israel, as the Gemara says, the Midrash says, that Edom are always there as a threat to the Jewish people to always keep the Torah, because otherwise Edom is going to be right around the corner. Now introduces his second superpower. The Chamor ze Yisachar. V'hu ki b'nei Yisachar yodim b'ruach HaKodesh ma HaKadosh Baruch Hu oseh b'olamo. The B'nei Yisachar have Ruach HaKodesh, and they know what Hashem's currently feeling towards the Jewish people. Itot Ratzon v'itot Arogas. Whether Hashem is currently pleased with the Jewish people or currently in a state of anger. The Hodia Israel sheyasu tshuva letaken hashayev too. Now if they see that anger is showing up in the horizon, they can tell the Jews to do tshuva quickly. V'zeh ladat ma yaseh Israel. So they can teach us how to do tshuva. U'b'zeh en pachad adam alehem. Because once the Jews are doing tshuva, ki en lehem shlita al Yisrael, the non-Jews and the Edom don't have power on the Jews. Ela kad yavrun al pitgami oraita. As the Targum says, when Yitzchak gave a blessing to Esav eventually, and he said that your brother is going to be your master, but hayak hasher tarid, if they sin, then you'll be able to throw off their yoke from your shoulders, and then you'll be in charge. So the Edom only comes and bothers the Jews when the Jews are sinning. So if we have Yisachar, which are the rabbis that have Ruach HaKodesh and they can tell us to do Teshuvah, then we're good. V'shema tomar achar avoda chochma v'banim ve'en lem Torah Yisachar. When the wisdom of Yisachar ends eventually, then what we're going to do then? Ze'amar v'tzon elu Yisrael. The Jewish people are like sheep. And what do the rabbis say about sheep? Adamo behemah tashir Hashem ki Yisrael nikru tzon. Just like sheep, makina tov eino boet. You can hit a sheep and he won't rebel. Kach Yisrael savrin Yisrael. The Jewish people have suffered many generations and they don't rebel against Hashem. They suffer a lot from different things. And then you won't be able to kill them because they'll be suffering from other things, and that will get rid of their sins. V'shema tomar. So if you want to say, how long can the Jewish people suffer? Forever? Can they suffer forever? Is there going to be no end to the suffering? Can the Jews really suffer without any end? What's Eved? Ze David. Lomar ki kasher besof hagalut yitzu mi yisurim. Az yavo David hanikra Eved Lashem. He says at the end of the Galut, the suffering will end. And then David HaMelech will come and he'll be the Mashiach. And then he says, we'll read this last piece by heart, that Abigail was the one that saved David from not sinning. And he's saying that Abigail is a shivcha, meaning she caused David from not falling into sin, and that would have prevented him from being Mashiach. So that's why shivcha, when the pasuk says shivcha, is talking about Abigail, that she took away David's temptation for sin at that time, and that's why he was able to be Mashiach. So B'ezras Hashem, we should have David come to take away Edom and all the goyim, the Karov Mamash, Chazak Baruch. Usually you have to bring Mashiach.